Shalom and welcome to It's All About the Aliyah. You know, Deuteronomy 30:19 says this: I call heaven and earth as witness today against you, that I have set before you life and death, blessings and cursing. Therefore choose life, that both you and your descendants may live. You know, we choose to follow God and to serve him. And along the way, there are decisions that have to be made on a daily basis. In the case of the war in Ukraine, some of those decisions could mean the difference between life and death. Here to talk to us today about decisions in Aliyah and many other things is our foremost expert in Aliyah and our field operations director for Ezra International, also the director of Ezra UK, my dear friend and colleague and friend of this program, Pat Frame. Pat, welcome back to the program.
Hi, Gary. Thank you.
Yeah, it's good to have you. This is an interesting topic we've chosen to talk about today. You know, we've watched what's happened recently in Ukraine, basically forcing some decisions that maybe normally would not have been made, and then others that had to be made quickly versus having time to make those decisions. You have been talking with some of our colleagues there and those members of the Jewish Agency. Why don't you share with us a little bit about some of those decisions that they've had to make recently?
Yeah, I think at the very beginning, we've kind of got used to hearing all the news now, and however difficult it is to listen to at times, it's become part of our daily routine. But at the very beginning, there was such a feeling of shock for almost all of our team members and for everybody living in Ukraine. I think although there had been some warnings, most didn't fully believe that Kiev would be hit.
Yeah, you didn't want it. None of us wanted to believe.
They didn't want. No, we didn't either. And that affects your decision making. It was like they were kind of frozen in time for a period, and it got very obvious that things were increasingly dangerous. And I had two particular kind of conversations, probably in the same week. One was with a friend of mine who I've known for a very long time, and he lives with his elderly mother. And in a ninth floor apartment, not a good basement to shelter in, not really a place to shelter in. So they were spending, when the sirens were going off, they were in their bathroom. Now, their bathroom is very small, so I still can't quite imagine it. But one of them would have been lying in the bath, basically, or they were sleeping in their corridors away from windows. And to make the decision to leave was incredibly difficult. And there were a lot of factors to the decision, but the main one was how to get from their apartment to, there was a bus that would take them to West Ukraine, but they had to cross the city without a car and not knowing exactly how things were outside. It literally, they had a sleepless night. I actually had a sleepless night because I was kind of with them in it. And finally, in the morning, they decided they would go, and they are safe in West Ukraine.
Thank God.
And then we also I was on a call with Mel, with one of our Kiev team, and they were going through the same kind of thing of they wanted to stay and defend their city and were quite, I don't want to say aggressive, but quite positive about a role they could play in defending their city.
Sure.
But we were also reminding them we need them to be able to be in a place where they can continue the work and be safe. And that conversation probably took about 45 minutes, trying to, not trying to manipulate them in any way, but trying to convince them of the reality of their situation, and that really they needed to make the decision to go. Now, we can't force anybody else. God, as you said from Deuteronomy, God has given us that amazing gift of free will, and we can't impose our will on somebody else either. But sometimes you see things less emotionally at a distance. And it was an incredibly difficult decision for them both to accept that they were at that point of Kiev and their lives and their properties being in that level of danger.
Yeah, I don't think any of us fathom that. It's horrific to think that war would come. And I know that every one of our people was given the opportunity to leave Ukraine. If they wanted to. We would have gotten them out, and every one of them chose to stay. And in their desire to serve the Jewish people when they needed it, and also, as you said, to defend their own country.
Yeah. A couple of them left, but with family just over a border and things like that. And then one or two had to move within the country. And that choice was made for them. Our team in Kharkov, their bombing started very close to their property. I don't know actually whether their property is okay or not, but they moved also to West Ukraine quite early on. And there was a bit of a panic for a couple of days because people didn't know where they were, but they're all safe. Yeah. But yeah, some areas it was more obvious more quickly.
Sometimes the decision is made for you. Yeah. I remember speaking to Olim in Israel in 2014 or shortly after when they left because of the war. None of them had decided prior to that they were going to make Aliyah. But when the war came, it changed everything, and the decision was made for them. So I think we're seeing that again here.
Yeah. And of course, what our team's going through is exactly the same as the Jewish people are having to go through. Should they leave? When should they leave? We spoke to a guy, a Messianic pastor in Odessa, who had come out to Romania, and we met with him, and or he was at a meeting with others we were at, but he was saying he had settled in praying that Mariupol was the red line for him. If things started to go wrong in Mariupol, he would leave. And he's actually has an American passport, so he could leave the country. But he had set a kind of parameter for himself, and he knew that once that came, of course, you could still change your mind, but they came out and were very glad and were working to help others in their community to come out. So, these decisions are kind of constant.
Yeah, I think that was wisdom on his part to set a place to where it was triggered, have this decision made, and then a place to go when that parameter was met. Pat, we're up against the break, so we're gonna pause right here, and we'll be right back.
Ezra International Global Network is now on Rumble, and you can even watch us on your Apple TV, Amazon Fire Stick, or your Roku device. It's simple. Here's how to do it. First, download the Rumble app on your device. Then search for Ezra International Global TV Network. You can watch our live 24/7 channel and our weekly shows anytime you like. Oh yeah, and you can also go to our website and download our Ezra International app and take us with you wherever you go. Ezra International, we're there for you.
Well, welcome back. We're talking to Pat Frame, our Field Operations Director for Ezra International. We're talking about decisions that have been made most recently with the war in Ukraine, and how sometimes those decisions are made for us, and sometimes we have to do things that we would not normally do, Pat. And some of those decisions, I'm sure, have factors in them, like, do we have a place to go, or do we have family? Are we fit? Have you experienced or had conversations along those terms?
Yeah, I mean, timing of when you go is also an issue, and that sometimes is even harder than you might make the decision in principle to go, but wait too long. And I was translating one account this morning of a family from Chernigov. Chernigov is north of Kiev. It's been in the news quite a lot. And they left it until almost the last moment. And pretty well as soon as they left, there's a bridge that was bombed, which meant once that was destroyed, nobody could leave the city. And they were in contact with family and friends there, and they were down to like a couple of tins of food and jars of jam. no electricity, no heating, no water. And they just made the decision in time, but others hadn't. But there are different factors. I think it's easy for us. We want to see people go to Israel. And we were on the Romanian border with Ukraine a couple of weeks ago, watching we were in the Jewish Agency reception tent, which they were sharing with the Joint Distribution Center. We were speaking to the people working there and also a few of the refugees coming through. And of the Jewish refugees, they have to make the choice at the border. Are they going to stay in Romania or are they going to go on to Israel? And that made a difference in where they were sent to stay for the initial days. And it was only between about 30 and 40% who wanted to go on to Israel, which was quite hard for us to hear. Yeah. But then you think, they're leaving probably husbands in Ukraine who cannot leave, or fathers or brothers, or maybe elderly parents who would not make that journey to the border. Maybe all sorts of factors that we're not aware of. Language can be an issue.
That's true.
I think one thing that's affecting people's thinking is whether this is going to be short. And of course, it's like the first thing we were talking about. Everybody wants to believe it will be over quickly, but the reality is that that's very unlikely. Yeah. That you're making your decision on the information you have at the moment. And if that information is also impregnated with hope, then you will hold off making the bigger decision, maybe until whoever it is you're waiting for or circumstances change again. So it's not easy.
That is a great point. You know, we look, and as you said, we want them to make the decision to go to Israel because we feel that's best. But that's not. We're not thinking about the fact that when we think that way about maybe a husband, a brother staying back to defend the country, and now you are a mother traveling alone with the children, having to go to a strange country and that far away. You're right. There are a lot of factors that we have to weigh into it. I mean, the Donbass region, you know, everybody is aware of that region now because it's in all of the worldwide media. But for 8 years, that war has gone on there, and nobody had ever heard of it. It was the forgotten war. So if this particular conflict lasts for years, family members could be separated for a long period of time. And I think that's a great point you make.
Yeah. And it's difficult when, you know, the men aged between 18 and 60 can't leave unless they find ways around it. And there are a few. And apparently, if you have more than 3 children, the father can leave. But, you know, you can't rush to have 3 children. It doesn't work in a short-term arrangement. So, you know, it's not easy to make those decisions. I'll share another story if we've got a minute or two before we need to stop. But sure. Again, I read this today, and it was there was an old Jewish man approached our rep in Moldova, and when he was driving, well, I think it was at the center. It doesn't matter where we were. And he asked me, he knows that Igor teaches Old Testament. And he said, Igor, is this the end of the world? And I asked him back, well, how do you define that? And he replied, this is the Exodus. This has already happened in the past. This is the Exodus. It means the end of the world is coming soon. And this lovely old man took my cold hands with his warm hands and asked, what shall I do? What do I hold on to? And what should I do? And I replied, there is nothing you can do. And there is nothing to hold on to. There is nothing here. If you want to hold on to something and do something, the only way is to hold on to God. Wow.
Amen. Amen. Obviously, this gentleman is sensing that, and that's the right answer.
And one way or another, it's already the end of his world that he's known it up until now.
Sure. That is one
It's
thing.
never going to be the same again.
You're right. That is one thing that is very common in the interviews that I have done with Olim, is that everything they have ever known was in Ukraine, their family, their lives, they grew up there, job, everything. And then when the war came in the Donbass region, and everything was gone, they had no hope.
Yeah.
And thank God we were able to give them hope and a new life in Israel. But you're right. I think that's a very common theme. And you're also right about we're up against another break. So we're going to pause here, and we'll talk a little bit more maybe about some of the options and issues that still exist for the Olim as they move forward in their life. We'll be right back. All right, welcome back. We're talking to Pat Frame. And Pat, I imagine you have quite a collection of stories that are coming out of this current situation. Do you have anything else you'd like to share with us regarding that?
Well, just following on from the last story of this old man expecting the end of the world, there was one of the Jewish ladies working in the refugee center overheard the conversation, and she asked Igor, maybe I need to go to the islands and have fun. What to do next? Basically, get out of this situation. And Igor said, look, there are 180 people here. Go and hug at least one person, and you will understand what to do next. So she did that and came back in tears. I met her yesterday for the first time. And she said, Igor, thank you very much. I was ready to go crazy, but now I know what to do.
Oh, that Igor is a man of wisdom. What a beautiful connection. In the first case to that man's God, and then in the second case to a brother and sister. Wow, that's.
Yeah. He's sending me a kind of video diary most days, usually very late at night. So I look at a black screen and he's driving and it's completely dark. But, he's a pastor, and he tends to either preach a little bit in his daily diary or philosophize or comment. But you never quite know what it's going to be when he signs in, if you like. It's
Oh, he's a man.
And I've listened every day. Today I was translating them, which is why I know these stories are fresh in my mind.
Yeah, and he's seen so much, and he's a man of wisdom. And you said he runs too. One of these days, maybe together we'll be able to.
Yeah.
The two of us will run together. I'd love to spend some time with him. We know that this is a crisis situation that we're dealing with the war. And what have you heard about Israel dealing with the process? The decision. Are relaxing any of the requirements, the paperwork that you know of?
Yeah, the whole process has been. They were as unprepared as any of us were. So there was a lot of thinking and changing on the hop. The Jewish Agency moved out of Kiev very early to Lvov in West Ukraine. Then they went into Poland. Then they came back into Lvov. Normally, Moldova has a consul that visits every 3 months, roughly. Currently, they have 3 consuls working night and day almost. They're working till 1 a.m. sometimes to try and move, because Moldova got full. I mean, it's a small country, and every hotel room, every center, everywhere was full. So the consuls had to move quickly. And I'm sorry, I'm getting slightly astray here, but the airport in Moldova is officially closed to all air traffic, but they have opened it for charter flights to Israel. They're the only flights going from Moldova. And initially they did a trial, then a few days later another one. And up until a day or two ago, it's been a flight every day, which has been huge. We helped. Normally, last year, I looked it up this morning, last year we helped 93 people make Aliyah from Moldova. So far, during this war situation, we have helped 2,117.
Incredible. And they're all coming out of Ukraine.
Yes, because the one decision that has been made in Moldova is that the consuls are not dealing with the Moldovan potential limb. They're having to wait unless there's an urgent health issue or something. Yeah. I think they'll make an exception then. So Israel has relaxed some of the requirements for paperwork, and paperwork after this is going to be an ongoing issue. Again, buildings will have been destroyed, government places not working. I can't imagine all the ramifications. I kind of try not to think about it, but there are going to be for quite a long time. And of course, some people have slipped through the net, which makes Israel more cautious again. Yeah. They were talking at one point of letting people come and doing the check in Israel. And then I think reality dawned on them, because they were thinking, well, then they would send them back if the papers weren't in order. Well, where do they send them back to?
Good question.
Can't be Ukraine. Would they send them back to Romania or Moldova or Poland or whatever? So I think everybody is trying to find the best way to do this as it happens.
Yeah.
In Poland, they're very well organized, both the Jewish and Christian organizations, allocated tasks. Everybody knows what area they're responsible for. It's working well. Moldova, it's working incredibly well. Yeah. It's not Jewish Agency doing most of it in Moldova. It's International Fellowship of Christians and Jews doing the flights and the centers. We also rent a center, but they're working well with Ebenezer in Moldova. So everybody's kind of trying to learn as it's happening and adapt, and it's changing all the time.
Yeah.
Right now it's slightly quieter, but everybody's expecting the next wave. So trying to kind of gather strength for, they're still working long hours. Igor says he's finally had 6 hours of sleep a night instead of 4. And sometimes it's only been 2.
Yeah, I've been reading, those reports you've shared with us in our prayer meetings, and some of the reports that have been coming. It's been supernatural, the strength that they've displayed in doing that. I remember the picture of him shoving 30 people into a 14-passenger van, and well, it's done. It's done. It's already done. But that's the efforts, the supernatural efforts that they're making, and going without sleep. I just interviewed Anya from Poland not long ago, and the cooperation there sounds like it's incredible between the different organizations. Same as you just said in Moldova. So within all of this chaos, we're seeing some beautiful cooperation, and that's important.
Yeah.
Isn't it true that speaking of Moldova and the van, they're trying to decide on getting a new vehicle there, which is going to be very important for the next road, aren't they? Yeah.
Yeah, the van they've got right now is already quite a few years old, and it's not quite held together with tape, but I think Igor feels it is a bit. So we've been looking at getting a van, but we've got to, it's not easy. There's a lot of rules on how best to import vehicles into these countries. They've got to be a certain age. They've got to be this, that, and the other.
Yeah.
We're in the process of doing that for him. Yeah. So also decisions on very simple levels, like what van is the best to choose, and how to get it there.
Exactly. And that's why I bring it up, because, we often in the Christian world have a tendency to spiritualize everything. And there are the Aliyah is very, very practical. And there are a lot of things on a day-to-day basis. And you and I know, we every week when we get together to pray in our group prayer call, we're praying for divine guidance, that the Spirit of God would guide us, not in some pie in the sky way, but in those everyday decisions that have to be made.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Aliyah, even without war, is a time of difficult decisions for people.
Yeah.
And in our kind of Christian excitement of seeing prophecies fulfilled, we sometimes forget that for people, it's not the easiest decision. Yeah. Even in good times, they're leaving all that they have ever known to go to a place they know very little about.
That's right.
And to start from nothing in a new place without the language generally and so on. So it's the same, but magnified a number of times. And without that kind of safety net of thinking, well, if it doesn't work, we can go back. And for some of them, that will not be an option because they won't have a place to go back to. And that makes it harder emotionally.
That really drives it home, Pat. Yeah, there is no place to return to in this case. And yet those decisions are hard. And as you said, one of the things that all the Olim would share with me when they were in Israel was, what was the hardest thing about this? And they would say, learning the new language. There are a lot of practical challenges, let's say, that go into this decision and then pulling it off on the other end. So
yeah.
The
story doesn't finish once they get onto the plane.
That is true. And
it's a whole other chapter starts.
A whole other chapter. And that's another reason why we partner with Ministry to Israel and for helping on the other end. When people get to Israel, there's a lot of challenges that still face them. Yeah. Well, Pat, thank you for your insight once again. Thank you for sharing with us the real stories and the practical side of the Aliyah and the decisions that have to be made on a daily basis. Unfortunately, we're out of time, but it's always so good to see you. We're going to hopefully do this often.
Yeah. Thank you for the opportunity. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you, Pat. All right. We're out of time. Thank you for joining us today. And as you can see, there are great needs in the Aliyah. There are a lot of decisions to be made every day. One of those decisions is the support that you can make. You can make that decision to help us continue to help Jewish people out of harm's way and from all over the world. They're coming home to Israel thanks to you. God bless you. We'll see you next time.